I have acquired over 6,000 apartments and rental units throughout my career being in real estate. But it started with one. I house hacked my own primary home. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in the real estate market today, what's happening with the economy, what's happening with housing supply, what's happening with housing demand, and the importance of understanding how to house hack as we move through the 2020s. So as we sit here today, the U.S. housing supply is at a dramatic shortfall of the number of housing units it needs in order to keep up with demand. And as we move forward, we need about 1 million housing units a year to keep up with population growth into the United States. And you can see how this is affecting the housing market. Even though interest rates are super high and the cost of housing is still very, very expensive, there's still a ton of demand for housing. And it's still technically a seller's market because there's more demand than there is supply of housing units. That's not going to slow down anytime soon. If you look back to 2022 when interest rates really started rising, they have increased at the highest rate that they've ever increased since the beginning of the Federal Reserve. And although they've come down a little bit, rates are still up there. Rates are still expensive. And when you think about builders and the people building housing supply in order to feed this demand, their loans, their financing is based on a variable rate loan or whatever the rate is on a short-term bridge loan. So that way they can just get the loan for 1 or 2 years, build out the house, build out the development that they want to do, and then they have to go back and refinance it. When interest rates start skyrocketing like they did in 22 and 23, all the builders put their pencils down. They stopped underwriting new deals because they didn't know. You can't buy something today and realize the value is going to be impacted dramatically in 24 months from now when they bring it to market and not know what that number is going to be. And with all the volatility in interest rates, they didn't want to take on that risk. Why? Because you can't build a single family home today for less than $300,000. You can't build multifamily properties for less than $150,000, $200,000 per unit. And so because of that, the only housing that's really coming online is really middle tier to upper tier luxury housing. No affordable housing. And I'm not talking about like low income housing. I'm talking affordability, middle of the road, majority of Americans being able to afford a home based on their income. That number is typically in that $300,000 to $350,000 price point. And so if you can't afford that, what do? Well, we need to figure out ways to generate more income for the individual. And one of the best ways to do that is by house hacking. So when I first graduated from college and bought my first home, I went and bought a single family house. It was a 3-bed, 2.5 bath home in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And I had 2 of my buddies move in with me. And so house hacking a single family residential is what that's called. So this is when you buy a home and maybe you're single and you have some roommates and your friends rent rooms from you. You also see this on whatever Craigslist or Airbnb or Facebook Marketplace, and people renting out individual rooms in their house. I've seen it a lot in New York when I used to live there. People would rent out an actual room in their apartment in order to be able to better pay for rent. Well, you can better pay for your mortgage by doing the same exact thing. And that's what house hacking is. So on this, I think my mortgage was like $1,400 a month. I had 2 of my buddies move in with me. They each paid me $500 a month in rent. So I got to own a $300,000 house for $400 plus some utility expenses. So it was able to dramatically reduce my housing costs, and now I was able to afford to actually buy a home. Where I see a huge opportunity over the course of the next several years is going to be in small multifamily properties, 2 to 4 units. The reason this is important is because this qualifies for owner-occupied financing on a property like that. So you or I could go to Fannie Mae and get a loan to buy this 4-unit multifamily property, live in one of the units, and then rent out the other 3. So 2 would be small multifamily. So think about how the math could work on this. If you're going to go buy a 4-unit multifamily property for, let's call it $600,000, maybe you can't qualify for a $600,000 loan with your own income. But the income from each of those other apartments, let's say they rent for $1,500 a month apiece, that generates $4,500 a month in income that you can then add to your loan application. $4,500 a month times 12 months is $54,000 a year of additional income, which then allows you to qualify for this loan. So it's almost like you're only buying a $150,000 property. That's all you have to qualify for, because the income from the rents covers the remainder of that mortgage. And I think as the market continues to be constrained, as it gets tighter and tighter over the next several years until there's other solutions for affordable housing, I think this is going to be a big move for a lot of primary homeowners. Right now, the only people who buy these properties are, for the most part, investors, buying it for rental purposes and rental income. I think there's going to be a big shift of owner-occupants purchasing small multifamily properties, 1 to 4 units, who then live in there in one of the units and house hack the others. This could be a duplex, it could be a triplex, or it could be a quadplex. And by being able to do that, you can now create home ownership, have an investment, save up enough more money to then move into a single family home when the time comes, and keep this 3 units or 4 units or 2 units rented out as an investment property, feeding you on a monthly, annual basis. But I think there's going to be a lot of different changes and a lot of maybe grant programs, some owner-occupied tax benefits for people to go in and buy affordable housing, to renovate existing homes and update them. There's going to be a big movement in the second part of the 2020s that you're going to see of house hacking, owner-occupants buying smaller multifamily homes, and refurbishing of older existing housing that then gets brought up to current standards, and a lot of government programs to support the affordability of housing over the next 5 years. Listen, if you're newer to this kind of stuff and you have questions about it, we have a free community. Hop on Skool, Skool, and look for Commercial Empire. That's my group. We talk mostly about buying investment property. We talk mostly about scaling rental portfolios, but happy to help anybody who wants to come in there and ask questions about how do we house hack, how do we get financing, how do I underwrite one of these deals to make sure it makes sense. Now, I know it can be kind of a lot to digest, but it's a lot easier than you might think to actually move forward on something like this. And you're not only creating a home for yourself, but also an investment for your future.